Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you're with us wherever you are. If you're joining us here on local television in Santa Barbara, California area at TVSB, we welcome you. And so many of you are joining us all around the world on all these other platforms. The podcast platform, Good Life Conversations, is what you search for. And then, of course, there's the YouTube channel and all the social media. And of course, you can always go to goodlifetelevision.org. You can see all the long-form interviews as well as what we call power clips. We're kind of breaking those up. And it's just been so great to see so many of you joining us. And we love hearing from you. We're even on Twitter, by the way. Some people call it a sewer or a cesspool. We call it home. So you can find us on Twitter, Good Life TV. We'd love to have you there. And a lot of you are watching some of these great clips at Twitter. So welcome. And we love you. We're glad you're here. And we're always, as always, we're brought to you by Bunnin Chevrolet, our friends Leo Bunnin and the crew. Grateful for them. We're here to do the good stuff. We're here to talk about the good stuff. We've had so many people over the last few years on this couch, and people from all walks of life. So I really think you'll be blessed if you go kind of check out this amazing, diverse, interesting, powerful, wonderful group of humans that we've had here, for young people and people with great life stories, entrepreneurs, business leaders, athletes, coaches. It's really been a little bit of everything. So we think you'll enjoy it. We're here to uplift, to honor, to encourage. And we get to choose what we dwell on. And so here at Good Life, we're dwelling on the good stuff. It doesn't mean we can't talk about the hard stuff. There's plenty of that going around. But what we dwell on is important. So we're grateful that you're here for this ride with us. And I'm so excited about my guests today. This couple, Dr. David and Joanna Hairabedian, are with me. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Based out of Florida now, they have an amazing work ministry. This is an amazing couple, and I want to get into a lot of it. But let's start with kind of where you each came from. You kind of take us back a little bit in terms of your life journeys, where it started, kind of your early life.
I'm going to let Joanna go first.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's funny how our journeys of life converge. David and I always talk about how we've been on parallel paths. So I've been involved in ministry, and David's Jewish. And what's interesting is I worked with a whole production team, and we used to do these Passover Seder dinners.
Oh.
Right. And so it was a whole show. So it was a little bit different than the traditional Seder because that's really long. But this embodied all the components of the Seder, but through telling the story through drama, through music, through dance.
Yeah.
And so and then at the end we would tie in the whole purpose of the Passover and how that leads to Christ, and he's the Passover lamb, and offer an opportunity, for them to receive the bread of life,
Wow.
which was Yeshua. Yeah, it was really awesome. And so I was in Northern California at a school called Supernatural School of Ministry, Bill Johnson's church in Redding, California. I was there with my mom, and I was working and going to school and taking care of my mom at the same time. And I met a woman there named Jody, and we hit it off. We became friends, and she was friends with David. And so, but she didn't have any purpose for us to meet other than ministry purposes. And so she said, you should meet him. So she asked David to send me a friend request. So I looked at his profile and I thought, I don't need another project. Yeah. Because he's got quite the past, as we're going to talk about today. And so I just kind of ignored his friend request. So we finished the school, we moved back to Orange County, California. And then Jody says, oh, by the way, Pastor David's going to be in town, do you want to have dinner with us, with his brother, blah, blah, blah. I said, sure. So we met, and this was, almost a year and a half later. And we had our first dinner meeting, but I wasn't attracted to him, and he wasn't attracted to me. And so, but I thought he was a great person, and vice versa. So, he comes and goes, and then he has a ministry it's called Heart of America Prison Ministry. And what the ministry does is provide beautiful discipleship leather-bound Bibles to prisoners. There's a waiting list of there was at that time 2,000 inmates who wanted a Bible because they want their lives changed. So I thought, well, you know what? I feel like I'm supposed to sow into this ministry. So I start sowing And then he calls me and didn't know it was the same person he'd met.
Donor engagement.
Yes, donor
Right.
engagement, exactly. And so, so then it turns out, he realized who I was, and from there we became prayer partners and friends, and then I helped him with different ministry projects, and so about a little over a year goes by, and then he comes back into town and felt like I was supposed to sing at the service he was preaching at.
It was down in San Diego, and I heard that she sang, but I didn't know the level. But it was in that service where I invited her to come up and sing, and when she did, she sang in Hebrew and translated into English, and then the presence and the power of God fell in the congregation, and that was quite a how do I say that? It was game changing for me. I said, wow, all that power packed into that little beautiful girl.
Right.
And then I had a spark, and I thought that spark, denial was not a river in Egypt. And so she had a spark at the same time when we walked into the church, and it was an amazing service. So it was from there we decided, let's journey and see if God is in this. And as we did, we discovered that he was, and that was 9 years ago, and we've had a marvelous marriage ever since.
Wow.
And my wife actually has a new book coming out called 7 Mistakes Women Make That Repel Good Men and How to Reverse It. 7mistakesbook.com. So that's going to be coming out soon.
And there'll be one for men as well.
Which is 7,000
7,000.
mistakes men make that repel good women,
Yeah.
and possibly reverse it. Yeah. No, but that book is very close to coming out. In fact, the cover just got done yesterday. We finally landed on a cover. But what's beautiful about it is it helps women realize how they've inadvertently operated in superhero deactivators with men who are really called to be superheroes. Men are called to be queen makers, and women are called to be king makers. Mm-hmm. But so often Hollywood has taught us how to become, as men, women breakers, and women cause men to be man breakers. So we need to restore royalty, honor, kingdom principles. And what happens is when women read some of these chapters, they're like, my gosh, I'm guilty. And then they begin to move into that royal calling where they stand next to their king and rule the chess table, lifting people up instead of standing over one man that they broke, or a man standing over one woman. So it's about really the supernatural ways of royalty and honor and restoring that divine order.
And women struggle. Like I used to struggle with my self-esteem. I felt like I wasn't worthy. Now, on the outside, no one had any idea, right? Because I was I covered it well. But on the inside, I was a broken mirror, and I just didn't know who I was. And so I had heard all these stories about people who die and they go to heaven. And I thought, well, I want to go to heaven, but I don't want to die, and I don't want to have a horrible accident, get my limbs cut off, and go through a year of trauma,
Right.
So on my birthday, and this was the year that I went to a Bethel Supernatural School of Ministry, so on my birthday, I was just meditating, praying, and all of a sudden I had a vision, and I was in heaven, and I was in this beautiful ballroom, unlike anything you've ever seen, and these hosts of heaven were there, and these majestic angels of music, and so I'm looking at all this, it's just stunning, and then I look ahead of me and I see Jesus, and he's standing at the far end of the ballroom. And so then he starts approaching me, and as he approaches me, he lets me see myself the way he sees me. And I was wearing this beautiful gown and this tiara on my head. And then he came and he took my hand and he danced with me. Yeah. And so then later he said, my daughters on earth don't know that they are my princess. And I want you to remind them that they are my royal princesses, and I want you to crown them. Now, I had no idea what that meant at that time. So fast forward, my friend runs a pageant in Orange County, California. So she's like, hey, you should compete. I said to her, why would I compete, Because I thought, I was very judgmental. I thought, beauty queens were stuck up in plastic and everything else. So
And some are.
Right.
but they're all nice. And so, so my other friend said, Joanna, you're leading your community. You live a wholesome lifestyle. You value your identity and you value others. Orange County, California needs a role model like you.
Right.
You're a strong Christian woman. I said, oh, so that changed my perspective. So I competed, and that's when I won my first title, and that's when my crowning ceremony program started. And so God spoke to me and said, okay, now this is going to start, and gave me a download on how to actually execute doing a crowning ceremony. So the first one was at a children's quadriplegic hospital. And so I enlisted the help of the firemen. So we did this whole service. So we crowned the girls, the royal princess of the King of Heaven, and then knighted the boys. So I had the firemen knight the boys, a knight of the King of Heaven. And then there was this one young lady, after we'd done the whole thing, they asked us to go directly to her room because she was not able to attend the main service. So we take the whole entourage of 7 firemen, you know, singer, a dog, all these things, right? But we walk in and there's no response. So I look at her, her eyes are closed, she's laying lifeless on the bed. So I call her name and I said, Karina. All of a sudden her eyes open. And I said, we're here today to crown you a royal princess of the King of Heaven. And her eyes got all big. So we did the whole ceremony for her. And then when the fireman put a rose on her shoulder after I crowned her, she started talking. Well, we found out that Karina had been non-responsive until I called her name. For 5 weeks, she hadn't been responsive, and she hadn't spoken in 5 years. So that was a miracle.
Oh my goodness.
So this is the power of the crown when it's yielded and wielded properly to lift people up, and the power of the voice and identity. And when people know who they are, the enemy can no longer tell them who they aren't. Most of the people in the world don't know who they are, and we're daughters and sons of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I believe that the majority of problems in the world, if not all, are rooted in one primary thing: mankind trying to fulfill their God-given calling without God.
And
Moses,
that was you.
That was me. Moses went out and had a calling as a deliverer, kills one Egyptian without God. He's 40 years on the backside of the mountain. He comes back with God, with his identity, and he's able to deliver 3 million.
Yeah.
And so you've got Mother Teresa, knew who she was.
Right.
And she planted 1,000 orphanages to get girls off the street. Then you've got somebody else that's from this area who was apostolic and planted 1,000 pornography studios with his apostolic calling.
Right.
So it's with God,
Right.
fruit, life, health,
Right.
and restoration. Without God, it's destruction,
Right.
pride, narcissism, and all those things.
Tell about your journey.
What's that?
Tell about your journey.
So, you know, I grew up in a Christian home, and I was water baptized at age 8. I went down a devil, came up a devil. And then through a series of, life experiences, at age 19, somebody introduced me to drug trafficking at a very small level. And so I made more in 2 minutes on a break as a checker at a grocery store than I did the 20 hours part-time when I was going to college. And that changed things. When I realized I could make more money in 2 minutes than I could in 20 hours, all of a sudden everything shifted, and shift happened. And we went into overdrive. So I went from a couple of grams to ounces to pounds to kilos. The next thing you know, I'm arrested with a stolen Jetta Mercedes-Benz and a bag of cash at a private airfield in Boca Raton, Florida, where the feds came out of planes, trains, automobiles, screwed 9mm into my ears, ruined my orange juice morning. I didn't pass go. I didn't collect $200. I spent the next 19 years, 6 months, a week and a day in federal prison. I woke up in Leavenworth Penitentiary in Building 63, where the Birdman of Alcatraz actually had his birds, was in Leavenworth, Kansas, not in Alcatraz, California. And it was me and 200 cockroaches and 2 cellmates. And in response to my mother's prayers, God sent Jesus to appear in that prison cell in Building 63. And it radically changed my life and those present as well. But that's the power of a mother praying. So as we were in that cell, we were praying, they were praying, and all of a sudden the atmosphere changed dramatically. And the presence of God came in. In fact, the sounds down the hallway in a prison tier are not always the greatest sounds that you hear. And the language that's used is not always flowery, like heaven. But it was like all that was muffled out, almost muted. And there appeared the only way I could describe it is if you look at Star Trek where they teleport in.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that. And here this figure is standing before us in a white robe, doesn't say anything, and all of a sudden it becomes more pronounced. And it's in my book, Jet Ride to Hell, Journey to Freedom, jetridebook.com. But what happened was, in front of 2 other prisoners, the Holy Spirit fell in a very powerful way, and I was radically transformed. And he stayed for about 15 minutes, no words were spoken, and then as he dissipated, and the love that we felt, and the peace. The word shalom is the word peace, and the word shalom really means to topple or remove the king of chaos. So it's not just a peace that comes on us, but it's removing or toppling or felling the king of chaos in your life. And so that's the shalom peace of God. Jesus is the Prince of Shalom. He is Jerusalem, the city of peace. And when we have him come in, we begin to carry peace, and it topples the king of chaos in our lives and the lives of other people.
Now, this is not happy thoughts. Yeah. This is something real. I mean, this is something.
It's supernatural.
That comes out.
Yeah.
And so what happened is, after Jesus left, I saw this small cloud the size of a man's hand on the floor, and we've just had this encounter. I'm like, do you know Jesus? And when I did, it sparked like gold and silver, gold and platinum. And I said, Jesus. And every time I said that, gold and platinum, it filled the floor. And I later found out that this was the Shekinah glory of God. And it's really throughout 2 Chronicles 5:13 and 14, where the cloud of his presence came in the New Testament on the Mount of Transfiguration. So it's really throughout Scripture, but it took me 9 months to find it. So if somebody's listening, they're like, well, that's crazy. It's in the Bible, but it took me 9 months, so I understand. But what happened was, and this is I had sinus problems at the time, and I heard the still small voice of the Lord say, drink from the cloud. And I thought, drink from the cloud? And I thought, I've got sinus problems. So I reached down into this tangible presence of the cloud of God's presence, and I reached in, and you could feel it, and as I pulled it up, it would spring back into itself. And I couldn't drink from the cloud. It was about 18 inches in depth and thick on the floor, and my 2 co-defendants were there, and they saw this whole thing. This was not a vision that I had alone. This is 3 people saw these same things. And so I knelt down. We have to come to him. We draw near to God, he'll draw near unto us. And I knelt down into the cloud, and when I pulled it up, I drank, and I drank 3 times. It went down into my lungs and up into my sinuses. I was instantly healed. And then the prayers that we prayed, whatever was in my co-defendant's mind would come out of my mouth in English. And whatever would come into my mind would come out of his mouth. One mind, one accord. And all those prayers were systematically answered, with the exception of 2, within 48 hours. It was a glorious time. It lasted about 2 hours. Then the presence of God dissipated, and we were back to normal in that cold prison cell. And although the cockroaches had left. Anyway, so that was our encounter. So that was my experience where the Lord encountered me. People say, oh, you found Jesus in a prison cell. I'm like, no, he was never lost.
He found me.
He found me. I was the one as lost as last year's Easter egg. So that was 1990. Fast forward 2023. That's 33 years ago. I've never looked back. Out of that, I had another encounter where I had a tree of books grow out of the ring finger of my right hand and reached 1/3 of the earth. And long story short, I said, I don't want to be a writer. I don't even like to read. And I heard the voice of God speak back to me, just as it was told to Joseph, it shall be done. And the Holy Spirit on the inside of me, like an obedient soldier, responded back, yes, Lord. And I'm thinking, what am I, chopped liver? I'm not even involved in this transaction. So God put in me a desire to read and to write. And that was 15 books ago. And so my book is in the prisons. Almost 500,000 prisoners have read the book. We're getting ready to move book to movie, so it'll be on the big screen to help encourage people in the area of God's love for the prisoner, God's redemption plan. And God loves us just the way we are, but he loves us way too much to leave us in our current condition.
Right.
Whether it's the lockdown of lust, the penitentiary of pride, the Bastille of bitterness, the shackles of shame, whatever it might be, he wants to pull us out and set us free, because that's what he died for on the cross, for you and for me.
You were in prison for 19 years?
19 years, 6 months, a week and a day, 1,000 hamburger days, but nobody's counting. So 1,000 hamburger days is you get a hamburger once a week in federal prison. So I had 1,000 hamburgers in prison. But it looks like I've never done a day in prison, because when you go into the fiery furnace and the fourth man in the fire shows up, you come out without the smell of smoke. And it's the grace of God. And then I get out and I'm single and celibate. So I was single and celibate 25 years and was actually co-pastoring a church, and I didn't understand that the biblical standard was not necessarily the church standard. And so people thought I was weird, or they thought maybe something happened to me in prison and they didn't know. And so they thought, I'm not dating.
You hear rumors about that.
Is the women, who were interested in him, which were many, by the way, they're like, oh, well, there must be something wrong with him because, he's not attracted to me. So he must be gay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was really funny.
So then when I finally did have the spark with my lovely wife to be at that time, and I announced that I was dating, we lost 5 or 6 good tithers that night.
Yeah.
All
they went to a different
single
church.
divorcees. but that it's just the reality of life. And so the point is this: we ended up dating, getting engaged, getting married, did it the right way, came together on the wedding night. She'd been single and celibate 16 years. And the bottom line is this: it pays to wait, it pays to do it the right way. And God honors obedience. He'll work with our disobedience and our mishaps and our slips. So there's no condemnation. He's like the GPS that says, recalculating,
Right.
recalculating, make a U-turn,
We've had to do some
repent,
recalculating.
Yeah.
return to the penthouse, the highest place with God. And so at that point, then she ends up winning Miss Orange County, California. She ends up winning Miss Anaheim, California. We got married. And then it was about 5 years in, and she every year would say this: do you think I should compete for Miss America 26 and up division? I'm like, I just don't really feel it. And we're coming back from Long Beach, and she says to me, do you think I should compete for Miss America this year? And I looked at her and I said, yes, and you will win. I looked at my finger like, what was that? And she ended up having 2 days before the pageant entry date closed, and we ran around getting outfits and shoes, and I've never been a father to a daughter, so this was my wife, but I can feel for men, and I have men that have daughters. Kudos to you, you're amazing. I only had 6 weeks of it, but she ended up getting into this pageant, and she ended up winning Miss America, MS America 2019 in Long Beach, on the Long Beach Queen Mary, right as we're leaving Long Beach on an unrelated matter. And then she, because of COVID, ended up reigning till really handed off her crown in October of 2022. So that's fast forward her experience in heaven with Jesus and the crowning ministry, my experience with Jesus in a prison cell in hell. So
but I want to ask
it's the
something
same
about your story. So he actually ended up getting tried on the same evidence in 3 different jurisdictions through a dirty prosecutor.
Well,
It's a torrid story.
the good news is that it's in the book.
Yeah.
But the good news is, years later, I was indicted 3 times on the same evidence in different jurisdictions over a period of 4 years, 11 months, and 27 days. So 3 days before the statute of limitations ran out was my 3rd and final indictment, and it was my prosecutor's final gesture before leaving office. He wrote me a personal letter on U.S. Attorney letterhead saying he was resigning not because of any of the allegations or accusations I'd made against him in federal court with holding evidence, enhancing the sentence, and all the other stuff. But we want to talk about the good side, because God takes whatever the enemy means for harm,
Right.
and he turns it for good. Genesis 50, verse 19 and 20. Joseph was in prison. Remember, just as it was told to Joseph, it shall be done, is what the Lord spoke to me in response to the Tree of Books vision. treeofbooksvision.com, you can read that whole story. So God developed character in me. I think so many times we have microwave miracles that don't produce lasting fruit.
Right.
And other times we have crock pot delays where the flavor gets through and through and characters developed, and now miracles can be released.
I believe that.
So I think too many people are looking at times for microwave miracles
Or magic shows.
or magic shows. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see God heal a lot of people, miracles. We just had a person in Kansas City was neck broken in a brace and in a wheelchair. And I went and, Joanna was playing worship music, and I just said, can I pray for you? And he said, sure. I said, what did you come for? He said, I came to see you. And I said, okay, so he came for the Lord to touch him. And I didn't even ask him. I said, is it okay to put my hand on your head? And he said, yeah, I did. And he just stared at me. And I felt this oil and this heat come down. And I left him. And it took about 20 minutes. And the next thing you know, he's like ripping the neck brace off. He's getting up. All the pain's gone out of his body. We have a video of him giving his testimony. He's pushing somebody out in a wheelchair.
He walked out of his own wheelchair.
And then somebody else he pushes him around. And then the next night, he came back pushing somebody, a stroke victim, in from the rehabilitation center. And he immediately went into ministry from having been in a car accident, T-boned on the driver's side, and 2.5 months with a broken neck and couldn't walk. And he refers to his feet as marshmallow man feet because they swelled up and gout and off all medications. Really amazing. So we do see those miracles. But the greatest miracle is when somebody's born again or redeemed life.
Right.
The greatest miracle is when the crock pot flavor gets through and character is changed. And that's true redemption, because when a prisoner becomes born again and they're really changed and discipled through our Heart of America Prison Ministries, heartprisonministries.org Bible program, there's an 87 percentile chance of household salvation. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, you and your whole household will be saved. Acts 16:31. When a mother, a matriarch of the house, is born again and discipled, 17% chance of household salvation. A child is 4 percentile chance of household salvation. So if you have 2 million prisoners behind bars, most of them men, if we can equip them because they're hungry, they know they've made a mistake, they want change, they have an extreme DNA, they're not afraid. They just don't know their identity.
Right.
And whatever you do without God, you must either fail at it miserably or succeed at it even more miserably.
Yeah.
A lot of people have succeeded very miserably because we minister to them behind the scenes. Wealthy people, millionaires, billionaires, and their stories behind the scenes.
It's ugly.
They've succeeded miserably, and they're looking for the way to do things right. So Mother Teresa, with God, 1,000 orphanages. Another individual we won't name, has gone on to eternity. A friend of ours used to sit at his table and preach Jesus to him.
Really?
Yeah, 2 of them actually. Yeah, one former, woman in the middle of the book, but we don't know that he ever received. But without God, he planted 1,000 pornography studios and brought people into bondage. Get your life right. Find your calling.
Yeah.
Get your identity in him and fulfill your gifting and your calling. The thief only comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus comes to give life and to give it more abundantly. Good root, good fruit, bad fruit. You can always tell what root you're operating on from based upon the fruit that's in your life. Don't like the fruit? Go back, ask him to root it up. Matthew 15:13 says, every plant that's not been planted by my Heavenly Father shall be rooted up. Anyway,
wow. Is he always like this, like Sunday morning over coffee?
He comes up with these great, we call them Davidisms. It's like, I told him, yes, you need to write a book. We need to write down all these Davidisms. He comes up with these amazing analogies. He's just brilliant like that.
It is. He's got quite a mind on him.
Oh, he does.
In addition to everything else. What a story.
Oh, I know.
And so let's talk about the royalty piece. Let's talk about this identity piece and what you're doing with young women, because I think it's so powerful and so true. Everything. I sometimes have said, it seems like we're all carrying around a fake ID.
Right. I like that. That's good.
Mm-hmm. And we need the real. When we get the real one, we can walk with that. So how are you helping? Because I think this is true. I could talk a lot about the men piece, which I want to. But let's for a moment, let's talk about the women piece. Young women. We have 3 daughters actually, and so I'm treasures in heaven.
Yes.
For me.
Yes, that's right.
One of them getting married in a couple months.
Wow.
That's double portion, brother.
That's right.
We're planning, when she was little, she's beautiful. We would sing. We had this rotunda in our house in Dallas, and we would dance. We wouldn't sing, we would dance. And that, I think it's Steve Curtis Chapman or somebody plays the song Cinderella. Mm-hmm. Have you heard that? It's I'll dance Cinderella. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh,
it's beautiful.
So we would dance to slow dance, pretending like it was her wedding. Mm-hmm. And now we're actually gonna have that. I'm like,
you're gonna need to have some handkerchiefs.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I told her the other day. I'm like, Hannah, do you remember when we used to dance to that Cinderella song? She's like, oh yeah. So I don't know if she's gonna choose it, but anyway, it's for what it's worth, because there is something powerful and true and authoritative and wonderful about young women walking in their true identity. And what you saw, what Jesus presented to you of that picture is, what are you doing? How can we help? What is the vision for? Because we're in a TikTok world,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on what's the game plan here to combat this culture that we're in?
I know, that's a great question, and that's something that we're strategizing right now, because this whole TikTok thing, this is where the kids are,
Right.
and so you've got to have the message that's relevant. And so I'm working right now on developing an app that would, I don't know how it's going to execute, but this is the vision.
Maybe I can help.
You describe it.
So she's been doing crowning programs around the nation, around the world. And so she did one called Women of Royalty, womenofroyaltyconference.com. And she crowned women, daughters of the King of Heaven. And it's a 2-day event that culminates with that. And during that event, as women got their identity and found out who they were, and they no longer partnered with who they weren't or that lie, and they got the truth, physical healings happened, spiritual, emotional healings. They were set free from depression, grief. A woman got her eyesight back. Another woman tore off a braid. Nobody prayed for them. But when they got their identity, everything broke off of them that wasn't their identity, because a lot of times people are sick because they think they deserve it. Whether we do or we don't, it doesn't matter. Because of what he's done, we now have access to the covenant and the blessing.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm writing a second book. I'm co-writing another book as well, which is going to deal specifically with identity. So it's about my story, about being in heaven. Because see, here's what happens when, right now in our culture, we have this awful, sex trafficking, the human trafficking and everything. And the kids are getting slammed with this false identity at school, and so the first step that we have to do is we have to help them come into understanding about what are the lies you're believing about yourself. Do you believe you're ugly? Do you believe you're not worthy? What is it? Because you have to come out of agreement with those lies.
The devaluation of humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I help them come into agreement. I give myself permission to receive. I give myself permission to receive a blessing. And so we did a crowning in Texas. No, it wasn't Texas.
But we did a crowning in Texas.
We did do a crowning in Texas. Where was the other one, the big one we did at the mansion?
Oh, we were in Oklahoma at the old governor's mansion with a lot of girls who were in foster care. And there was a girl who missed the crowning, and she was suicidal. And I think she was maybe 16, 17 years old, been in foster care. And you can only imagine what happened to her during those foster care years. So Joanna brought her up to her room where we had been given this great place, and Joanna ended up speaking identity to her and prayed over her and crowned her a daughter of the King of Heaven. Cutting fell off, promiscuity, alcohol, drugs, and she got what we refer to, I don't know what you would call it, but like a simultaneous reintegration of her fractured soul. Like if you have a mirror and you hit that mirror and it fractures it. And women are fractured, men are fractured from trauma. And when that fractured mirror gets made whole, people can look in the mirror and see themselves for who they really are. The Bible talks about we look in the mirror, but we walk away from the mirror forgetting what manner of man or woman we are. We need to see our reflection with Christ in us, the hope of glory, Colossians 1:27. And if you don't have that, just ask him to come in and change you. And he will radically answer that prayer, and he will come in and he'll show you who you are. And when that occurs, these women are radically changed and they walk away. We don't give away $1 crowns. We give away nice crowns, and these women are encouraged to wear those crowns out when they go out, when they go into church, or where they go to, just wear your crown out. Sport that. You're wearing that crown. I mean, when she got her Miss America crown, she slept in it for 2 weeks. I'm kidding. No.
That's not true.
But you know what? When that crown goes on, something happens, and even when that crown's off, you still carry that. You know, people say to me, well, David, I see you've got a wedding ring on. I said, hey, let me tell you something. My wedding ring on or my wedding ring off doesn't matter. I'm married with it on or off. And these women, they get their crown whether they're wearing it or not. Once they've been crowned, it's on. And when you're a queen or a princess, you don't trade that royalty because somebody bought you dinner.
We know Isaiah 62 verse 3 says that you are a royal beauty in the hand of Yahweh, a royal diadem in the hand of your God. And so that's part of what Jesus was speaking to me when I was up in heaven. They don't know that. They've forgotten that. You know, so when you don't know that, then you do end up marrying a guy who's abusive. That happened to me in my first marriage. You know, I was married once before. So I married, you know, Jekyll and Hyde. And, you know, that's what my first book that I, you know, 7 Mistakes Women Make, I share my journey and how I ended up in that situation, but then how God turned everything around. So what was meant to be the thing to break me was the thing that has made me right.
I've got to share something. So this story about my prosecutor, there's a redemption side that's amazing. So we were presenting in the business world a medical device that we rep, and they asked me to come up the last 5 minutes, and I was in Independence, Missouri, where I really was arrested in Florida, then brought back to Kansas City. That's where my case was out of. Long story short, there's this guy at this table, and while I'm closing out the meeting in a business setting, the supernatural love of the Father fills me. And I see this man, and God's love for him is like raging, overwhelming. And so it got so intense as I'm closing this out. I'm looking at the guy with the love of God, and he looks familiar. I can't figure out who he is. And he finally stops the meeting. He says, "Are you looking at me that way?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And I finished the meeting. I walk over, said, "It's good to see you again." He looked at me. He says, "Yeah, it's good to see you again." I'm thinking, who is this guy? Maybe somebody from my dad's church. And he says to me, "It's really too bad what happened to you." And I'm thinking, oh, he's probably praying for me. And he said to me, he goes, "Yeah," he says, "you got really," and he used a word that wasn't real Christian. I thought, my gosh, this guy's bitter about what happened to me. And he says, "Yeah," he says, the federal government really," and he used the word again. I'm like, I'm going to have to pray for him to get free from bitterness. I'm like, who is this guy? And he says to me, he says, "Yeah," he goes, I've seen you, you know, online. He says, "You're a motivational speaker." I'm thinking, maybe he's not a Christian. I'm like, and he says, "Well, I'm on the criminal defense side now." And all of a sudden I realize this is the prosecutor.
No way.
And I'm standing with the love of God. It's like I was on a moving sidewalk, and I had a choice. You know, we're leaky vessels. When we're filled with the love of God, we can leak out pretty quick. And this guy was in denial. He said, "How, you know, did you get out 89, you know, or 89?" I said, "No, 2008, 2009. He knew exactly. He blocked my release the whole time. And he was like thinking, you know, denial was a river in Egypt, you know, and he just didn't want to accept responsibility. And every time he would say something, it would be so amazing that he was blaming someone else than himself that I almost leaked out. But I chose to remain in that love. And he says to me, he says, "You look like you haven't done a day in prison." He says, "How did you make it through 19 years, 6 months, a week, and a day and look like you've never done a day in prison?" And I called him my name. I said, "Well," I said, "I learned one thing. Prison will either make you bitter or better. And it's always our choice. And I chose not to be bitter." And he looked at me. And he kind of shrugged his shoulder. I said, "Well, it's good seeing you." So I went to go shake his hand. And the love of the Father reached around him and pulled him in. Ex-con hugging ex-prosecutor. And it lasted about 3 seconds, which is, guys hugging, 3 seconds is a long time.
Eternity.
Let alone ex-con, ex-prosecutor.
Right.
And as I let go of him, the love of the Father released into him. God fills you to release it into the world. Don't think that God fills you so that you can hold on to it. We are there to be filled with our Bible and our tea or coffee or whatever, so that we can get filled, so we can inhale in prayer with God, so that we can go exhale in ministry to other people. And the more we inhale, the more we can exhale, and the more we have a capacity to hold His love, to go give it to a hurting, lying, dying, sighing world of destitute humanity in need of the Father's love.
Yeah.
Now, if you told me that when I was going through those 20 calendar years of prison and losing appeals and all the things that goes along with, Jet Ride to Hell, Journey to Freedom, if you'd have told me that I would be releasing the Father's love to my former prosecutor, I would have thought you had lost your mind. But you know what? Most of us really do need to lose our mind and get the mind of Christ.
Right.
The genius mind of Christ, because then you have heaven's perspective on a motion picture of God working all the scenes together for good and developing a negative into a full color photo.
Right.
Instead of a still photo. And in life, on social media and things, everything is a still photo.
Right.
But God is working things together for the motion picture. And we've got to allow him the time to take the negative, bring it into the dark room, and develop it into the picture.
So good.
So he'll do that for you.
Yes,
Just
he
ask
will.
him.
Yes, he will. So 15 books, crowning young women. And you guys are doing media, TV and a lot of different stuff. For a second, talk about young men. Because I think there's a, you talked about it earlier. There's kind of the Al Bundy, like the man portrayed that is just this watered down.
Right.
He's been emasculated.
And then a lot of people in the culture will react against people who talk about masculinity as if because they're afraid of the macho man that maybe they were raised by that didn't treat them well. Maybe like your
Let me ask you this.
Like
I saw a meme.
there's both.
Right.
I saw a meme, and it has this man carrying this woman out of a terrible situation, and it says, "No feminist is looking for a woman to save her in these situations."
Right. Yeah. Right.
You want a masculine alpha male, and I think there's a way that meekness is power under control. Meekness is not weakness.
Right.
And so you are a father when your daughter came out of your wife's womb and you had that child. You had meekness, love for the daughter. You carried that 8-pound little baby girl, 6 pounds, 7 ounces, and you were not weak. You were meek because you could have crushed.
Right.
But instead you protected. And so meek men are not weak men.
Right.
They protect. So men should never prey on women. They should pray for women and protect women. So knights of the King of Heaven don't prey on women. They're not something to be conquered. They're something to be protected and to prayed for.
And that's the other thing that we do is, David knights men and young and boys a knight of the King of Heaven, and we do a teaching on that. So it's not just the knighting portion; they have to understand what that entails and what that means, and that's also related to identity. And so that's one of the things I address in my book, 7 Mistakes Women Make, is I address our culture and how our media, the TV, film, all that, portrays men in a stereotype way that's negative. And it portrays women in a negative, stereotypical way. If you look at the Barbie movie that just came out, the subliminal messaging there, is awful.
Crushing little babies' heads on rocks, men that are stupid, it's a complete flip. And if you ever look, if you go online and you look at a depiction of how the history of Barbie, and I'm not against Barbie, but this current depiction emasculates men, and it tells girls that you don't need a man. You know what's interesting is 2 generations ago, women started saying, I don't need a man. The next generation was, I don't want a man. And this current generation is, I don't want to be a man. These girls are being forced into this transgender mindset. Wow, I don't want to be a man. I don't need a man. I don't want a man. I don't want to be a man. Wow.
And so what we want, what we want is what God designed.
Yes.
Right.
That's so. What we want is the man to be everything God designed him to be, and the woman to be everything. But I think what's gotten crazy is with the TikTok generation is the messaging is so all over the map.
Yeah.
I'll literally sit my boys. We have 2 boys. I'll literally sit them down their high school age, and sometimes tell them, I want to tell you who you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good.
And I know Okay.
That's right.
I'm the dad,
That's right.
and I love you, and they know that, and I discipline them, and they know that. But because I have to break through all the noise
I know.
that they're getting everywhere else. They've deleted TikTok, long since deleted TikTok, because it's just, but with the messaging and of the women, I just think has to be even worse, to be honest with you. The messaging is so crazy that I think there's a longing in these young people. Tell me who I really am.
Right.
What is the truth?
Yes.
How do we get to the truth? And now we're heading for artificial intelligence. It's going to get even worse. I watched a video the other day of a leader in our country who, I watched the whole video, and I came to find out it wasn't real.
Yeah,
No.
it's a deep fake.
I'm like, what?
And you couldn't even tell.
Couldn't tell.
No.
Him.
It's scary.
You'll get,
So truth.
Yeah.
Who
Right.
am I?
Exactly.
So Joanna, what she's doing, so she's crowned thousands of women one-on-one over the last several
Love
years. Thousands. And they go home with their crowns. So what we're doing is we're getting ready to use artificial intelligence. But
For
we're
good.
going to create
Yes, for good.
an app, and we're already in negotiations. It's going to be about 50 grand to do what we need to do. And it's going to be a crowning app where the girl is on the app, goes through the whole ceremony, and gets crowned. And Joanna has a desire in her heart to crown 1 million women
For starters.
through the app. But it won't be her, it'll be her doing the program.
Be my avatar.
Yeah.
But because of
Because
the,
I personally can't crown.
Right.
you can't get to that many people.
Right.
And so this is the way that we can leverage technology.
Yes.
In fact, our ministry is virtualchurchmedia.com. In 2014, the Lord gave me the word virtual church, and he gave me a download on what was coming. And pastors laughed at me until 2020.
Yeah.
Then they called me for consulting.
Hey, have you heard of this thing called Zoom?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Show me how it works.
Yeah.
And so we have an app on our phones or on our ministry. It's paid for by the partners and friends of virtualchurchmedia.com, and it's accelerated growth using technology on demand from the palm of your hand. We need to go fishing where the fish are at, not where they're not. Fish aren't coming out of the waters and going into the church and sitting on a pew begging to get harvested.
Right.
We have to go launch out into the deep, and where are they at? They're on TikTok. They're on social media. So Joanne went to a digital missionary class, and in a matter of 2 hours learned how to do TikTok, did some videos, some with an avatar, some without, and had like 40,000 views. Little kids are, 12, 13, 14 years old, not committing suicide because they're finding out who they are.
Right.
So this was our test run, and now we're getting ready to go to the next level. If people wanted to download our app at virtualchurchmedia.com, they could go there, they could see what we have. Everything on there is paid for at no cost. We want to reach the Z generation, which is less than 4% Christian. 96% do not know who they are, but they're looking in all the wrong places.
That's right.
We have to be in those places to tell them who they are.
Totally
So the virtual church is moving into the meta church. And in the metaverse, we're going to see 2 billion souls come across the board. We attended church where last year 3.3 million came to Christ.
Wow.
So when we say that, that's in missions and outreaches. The previous year was 2.2 million. Total of 85 million have come to Christ over 40 years. And so we believe in a major harvest. And I believe leveraging technology is the key right now. Next week, we're helping fund probably 45,000 souls will come to Christ in Nigeria, West Africa, in the rural areas. So we just bought our missionary evangelist, Nigerian born. He's been in ministry 45 years. He and his team of 30, they got displaced, and then we raised funds, and we put them in a 3-bedroom house. Now, they don't all live there, but now everything's safe. They've got security wire, and now we have a facility to give them stability to go releasability. They go into the rural areas where there's no electricity, no running water. They go into the bush. They don't go to the Hilton. They don't go to the Ritz. They go where the average income is $300 to $500 a year, no education, and they go with beans, rice, half an onion. They put them in little different 1 kilo bags for the mother, and like half a pound bags for the children, and they give them candy. And they come and hear the gospel. The book of Acts is on full display. Signs, wonders, miracles happen, and they come to Jesus. And so we're able to win souls for about $1 a head. is our
Yeah.
metric. A Bible is about $30 for us to get it to a prisoner in America. About $1 a day helps provide a Bible to a prisoner. I'm talking about a $50 to $80 leather flex, imitation leather, bonded leather, leather-bound Bible that we get through our partners that we've had relationships for more than 25 years. We've done this. And when that Bible comes into the prison cell, it helps change a life, one Bible at a time behind bars. When that food comes with the gospel and signs and wonders happen, it helps change lives, one food bag at a time, about $1 a head in third world countries. And in prison, to help get a harvest of an entire household,
Right.
winning a father to Christ,
87%.
87 percentile chance of household salvation for $30
Yeah.
from somebody who asked for a Bible and got on a Bible waiting list and is seeking change and discipleship.
Oh,
Help change lives one Bible at a time through Heart of America Prison Ministries. You can go to virtualchurchmedia.com and support there. You can
Yeah.
also support our Africa missions, and we do dollar for dollar. Goes right in.
Church Media.
Virtualchurchmedia.com. I'm David, my lovely wife.
Joanna.
We are the Hairabedians. Virtualchurchmedia.com.
No, I love it. What a great vision. And the
And $50,000 to get the mobile app done for the crowning. If somebody wants
and that's
to,
what you're looking to do?
Yeah, we're going to do
That's our
that.
next
It's
project.
going to be done once God gives us the vision. The provision comes. It's
Yeah.
God's will, God's bill, but it's also God's will, God's way.
Yeah,
We
right.
can't go make it happen on our own, or we pay the bill. If God sent us, He goes before us and He brings the people behind us, because those that go into the battle and those that stay behind with the stuff share equally in the harvest. 1 Samuel 30 verse 24. So there's three types of people: the goers, the senders, and the disobedient.
That's good. That's good. So you're based now in Florida,
Orlando area, yeah.
but you're obviously moving around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like quite a bit
Yeah, we
with
travel
with
a lot.
everything you're doing. So this is a lot. This is a full plate of
Yeah.
what's God's given you to do here,
Yeah, it is.
and in an amazing partnership. Where were you raised?
I was raised in Northern California.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm California bred.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Well, amazing. Dr. David and Joanna Hairabedian, you've heard about the different platforms. David's written 15 books, and I'm looking forward to picking up a couple of them myself and diving into this story. I don't even know where to start. Amazing.
Chapter 1.
Chapter.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, God is good.
It really is.
And I love the what you said about using the media. My grandfather was a pioneer. He was a goer. He was a visionary, and he, what he's done, we're still, building on. And he used radio. This is his 50s, and he used radio. He in fact, he built some apartments in Southern California for low-income seniors, and he had a microphone that was piped in to every unit, and he did a morning
Wow.
devotion.
Oh my gosh.
So you actually had to turn him off if you didn't
Wow.
want to hear my
Right.
grandfather come into your living room in the
That's
morning.
amazing.
And I keep thinking about him all the time when I think about the media, because I think, my goodness, if my grandfather was alive today, he would be using all of these platforms on steroids. Like,
Yeah.
he would be like,
Right.
"Are you kidding me? I can reach millions of people through this little thing in my hand." Like,
Well, exactly. And this is where the church, I feel, has failed as a whole, because we are not dominating at this time. We are not dominating the media.
No.
We're not dominating the movies. We're not dominating the social platforms.
But I believe it's changing.
But that's changing.
Yeah, I
There's
think
a
it
new,
needs to.
That's right. That's
Do you
changing.
know Kathleen Cook?
No.
Oh, ask Leanne about Kathleen Cook.
Okay.
There's a couple you need to meet in terms of they're thinking along the same lines in
Yeah.
terms of media, using media. Because
Exactly.
there's some people that are afraid of it, and no,
Right.
that's the devil, and I'm the opposite. I'm like, I go right into Twitter. I go right in. I don't care. We're not
No,
afraid
exactly.
of anybody.
That's right.
What do they say? Curse the darkness or light a candle.
That's right.
That's
What
right.
are you going to do? Go hide in your? Because you're right. I mean, we're waiting for them all to come back to the church building. And
Why would they?
I'm not sure that that's what they want to do.
Why
Like,
would they?
Yeah.
They'd have to backslide just to get into fellowship with those people. Instantly.
That's
And you
funny.
know what? They have an extreme
But they need
DNA.
community. We need
Yeah,
community.
absolutely.
So we need
We do
community,
need community.
but we don't. But it may not look like the.
Right. The old model.
Yeah.
It's the old model. It doesn't work anymore.
They'd have to backslide.
Just to get into fellowship with most people.
See, I'm a pastor's kid, so I get all the jokes.
Yeah, you got it.
I get all of it and love it. But I mean, the life, and I've gone way over, so I've just forgotten about the time, but I'm almost done. Life is what people are looking for.
Yeah.
Right.
Life, the good life. What is, that's the name of the program.
Yes.
Young people like my sons are looking for the real deal. I took them to a conference, a men's conference in January. They had baseball rainouts on their high school teams, which was an act of God to get them to come.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're in the front row and they watch these real men, manly men, but
Right.
not macho, stupid,
Right.
strong men.
Right.
You know, they tatted up, you know, a little more than myself.
Or me.
Yeah, you know, and Navy SEALs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guys, right?
Yeah.
And it changed. My boys were stunned, like, because they were seeing, like, oh my goodness, this is not some mealy mouth, watered down, pathetic. Oh, carry your Bible. Like, these are
Right.
strong men.
Right.
These are strong men.
These are real men.
Real deal.
Yes.
And lovers of people.
Right.
Lovers of Jesus and lovers of people.
Lovers of Jesus and lovers of people. That's what they were. And it was, and I watched my boys watch this thing, and then they came home and they start following these guys, and they're reading it, and they're like, Dad, that was, and I could tell it was like, because I think they need to see, and this is where something like you and you, this is a power couple. I'm surprised I didn't think of this. This works well because to see the crown, the young woman who's been crowned and who knows who she is and is a strong woman in the
Right.
best sense,
Right.
not in an angry sense,
Exactly.
in the best sense. And then a strong man who has the kindness and love and gentleness of Jesus. That gentleness,
Yes.
strong with gentleness. People go,
Yes.
that's an oxymoron. No, it's
it's
Jesus.
not.
His name is
That's right.
Jesus. That when young people like my boys or see those people, those models, which they need to see more of on media,
I agree.
all of a sudden the light goes on. I mean,
Right.
we're in an upside down world.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to Santa Barbara High School football games and I'm kind of like, holy cow, where am I? Like, I mean, again, they're seeing it on TikTok, you know, but the way that everybody's dressing now and I think we said
It's identity
It's all rooted in identity.
I know. And
or lack thereof.
Rough.
2 weeks ago at the football game, the high school girls, I couldn't really put my head around what we were dealing with here. I think we set a world record for white tank tops. I mean, just to be honest, like, and they were like, I mean, pretty much swimsuits.
Right.
Wow.
I think we set at least North American record for
Right.
white tank tops in one place at one time. And I was looking around going, I think, and so I talked to my boys about it after. I said, you know, the way the girls are dressing, I said, just so you understand, like, here's what I think that they're crying out for.
Yeah, that's right.
And so when all of your friends are seeing them as one way,
Yeah.
Right.
you need to see them
Yeah.
as sacred,
Right. Right.
children, you know, actually as daughters of God,
Right.
Daughters of the
to
King.
be loved and protected.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I was literally just trying to explain to them why this is happening,
Yeah.
like where this is coming from.
Right.
And again, there's no problem with dressing great or attractive. That's not the point. But like, I was trying to help orientate them because the young people need to be orientated to what's actually real in an upside down world. Let me tell you the truth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, because people are crying out by exhibiting something. You know, it used to be a person picking cotton a whole day to make a dress. Now a silkworm can spin one on a lunch break, right? You know, some of these outfits. But women are crying out for
Yes.
attention, and if somebody came and told them who they were, they would be completely changed.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be trading
Yes.
what God gave them as
Right.
precious and sacred for something that's not valuable or lasting on the other side. And so once women find out who they are, they'll tell that person, that's not who I am.
That's not who I am.
It's all about identity. You can tell them, don't do this, don't do that, beware
Right,
of this.
right, right.
Once they find out who they are, they won't do that anymore.
It's
No.
symptoms.
It comes
It's
naturally.
all of that. But you're right about their crying out. Men that are often, controlling and powerful and angry, they're fearful and they've been
Right.
rejected. So now you'd be like, oh man,
It's a flip side of it.
everything's an inverted kingdom.
Yeah, right.
So fear, so control spirit is rooted in fear and insecurity. So instead of trying to defeat somebody at a control spirit, You have to minister to them at that root.
Yes.
Hugging your prosecutor.
Oh man, what a story! That needs to be in the movie.
Yeah, I think it should be like a closing scene of like a redemption. But here's what's interesting. When people get the prosecutor's girlfriend came up to me the next day, and I didn't know who she was. She says, "You really messed so and so up yesterday when you hugged him." And I said, "Oh." And she says, "He's never felt anything like that before." And I said, "Oh, that was the anointing of the Holy Spirit." And she was into another, like a New Age thing, so she rewrapped it. But the point was, it was the Father's love reaching him. Jesus was skin on.
Yeah.
And one person yielded in the moment. And then, by the grace that I was given, I maintained that course and didn't become a leaky vessel. Released it, and afterwards I thought, what just happened? There's no possible way on planet Earth after 20 years.
Right, and that doesn't happen.
That was a God moment for him and for me. 2 people got set free at the same time because of the Father's love.
No.
And people that are in these situations crying out for judgment need grace. Grace not to bless their activities, grace but to give them permission to come out of the activity and be free. Whom the Son sets free is free. And
that's like a Les Miserables type story. With the guy that steals the china or whatever. That's an amazing story. Well, I am so flabbergasted by this interview, frankly. I mean, this is incredible, and can't wait to see what's next. And we'll be following you, and we'll encourage people to check this out. And I'd love to work together on whatever you're doing, because you are amazing people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your working, because what you're doing is amazing. You're impacting the community. You're impacting the media. So you're a life changer too. You're Superman.
Thank you. We're going for it.
That's right.
One body, many parts.
I love it. I have more of a face for radio. He should be on TV. Amazing. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.